David Beckham arrived at the stadium with his family just as the sun began to dip behind the Miami skyline, painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple. The air buzzed with excitement. It was match day, Inter Miami was facing a fierce rival, and the streets surrounding the stadium were a sea of pink and black, as fans flooded in, singing, waving scarves, and taking selfies beneath banners bearing Beckham's name. Despite being the co-owner and face of the club, David chose to experience this match as a fan, alongside his wife and children, seated quietly in the VIP section. Sunglasses and a casual polo shirt helped him blend in, though he could never fully disappear. They had just passed through the outer gate when he paused. Something, or someone, had caught his eye. Across the street, not far from the fan merchandise stalls, sat an elderly woman behind a small folding table. The table was modest, worn, and covered with a thin floral cloth. On top of it were neatly arranged small bags of candy, homemade empanadas wrapped in foil, and water bottles kept cool in a styrofoam container. The woman looked to be in her late 60s or 70s. Her skin was tanned and weathered from the sun, and her clothes were simple, a clean, faded dress and a wide straw hat that shielded her face. She was calling out to passers-by in Spanish, offering snacks with a soft voice, never too loud, never pushy. Many fans hurried past her without a glance, their eyes locked on the stadium ahead. Some waved politely but didn't stop. A few children tugged on their parents' arms, pointing at the candy, but were gently pulled away. Beckham's daughter noticed her too. "Daddy, can we get something from her?" she asked. David smiled but gently shook his head. "Let's go inside first, sweetheart. We'll see later." They walked past, but David kept looking back. Once inside the stadium, his thoughts kept drifting away from the game. The crowd erupted around him as Inter Miami scored an early goal, but his mind was elsewhere. That woman, her calm presence, the careful arrangement of her table, her dignity in how she worked, had left an impression. There was a grace in her simplicity. During halftime, while his family stayed in their seats, Beckham slipped away quietly. He left through a side exit, put on his cap, and walked around the stadium, blending in with the crowd. He didn't alert security or bring an assistant. He just needed to see something. As he turned the corner onto the same street, he saw her again. This time, something had changed. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, had tripped while running and scraped his knee badly on the pavement. His mother was tending to him but didn't have any napkins or water. The elderly vendor stood up, walked over with a gentle urgency, and handed them a bottle of clean water and a clean rag from her bag. "No, no, senora, we can't pay for that," the mother protested. "Tranquila, mija. It's okay. The boy needs it more than I do," the woman replied softly. David stood a few feet away, pretending to check his phone, but his eyes were on her. After a few minutes, once things settled down and the boy was cleaned up, Beckham approached. The woman had returned to her seat, adjusting her display of candy with the same gentle care. He greeted her in Spanish. "Buenas tardes, señora." She looked up, smiling warmly but without recognition. "Buenas tardes, joven." David pointed at the candy. "May I buy a few of these?" She nodded. "Claro, elige lo que quiser." He selected a few small bags of tamarind candy and handed her a $20 bill. She tried to give him change, but he shook his head. "I saw what you did earlier," he said, this time in English. The woman tilted her head. "Oh, what did I do?" "You helped that boy. You didn't have to. But you did." She smiled, a little embarrassed. It was nothing. I'm just a mother. You don't forget how to care even when they're gone." David's heart paused. "Gone?" She nodded, her eyes glancing down at her hands. "My son. He loved football. We used to watch every game together. He wanted to be a player. But God had other plans. Now I come here and sell snacks. It makes me feel closer to the game. Closer to him." David didn't know what to say for a moment. The noise from the stadium seemed to fade. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mariella." "I'm David." She shook his hand warmly. "Nice to meet you, David." He smiled. "Likewise, Mariella." They spoke for a few more minutes, about football, about life, about how hard it was to keep going sometimes. But Mariella's tone was never bitter. She didn't ask for help. She didn't even mention her struggles unless gently prompted. And that's what struck Beckham the most. Her pride, her calmness, her refusal to complain. Before leaving, he asked her quietly, "If there's one thing you could change in your life right now, what would it be?" Mariella hesitated, then looked toward the stadium. "I'd like to feel useful. To belong somewhere again." David nodded slowly, holding back the emotion in his throat. "You already do, Mariella. You already do." And with that, he turned and walked back toward the stadium lights, his heart fuller than when he had arrived. The day after the match, Miami settled into its usual rhythm, but David Beckham's thoughts were far from calm. The woman, Mariella, had left an impression that was impossible to ignore. Throughout the morning, he sat in the backyard of his home, sipping black coffee while his phone lay untouched on the table. He had met thousands of people, fans, celebrities, politicians, but there was something about Mariella's quiet dignity that struck a chord. He remembered her words, "I just want to feel useful again. Like I belong somewhere." The phrase repeated itself in his mind like a whisper that wouldn't fade. He had watched countless players prove their worth on the field, but rarely had he seen such poise and compassion in someone off it. There was a strength in her restraint, a resilience in her silence. Later that afternoon, he made a call to Javier, the club's operations director. "Javier," Beckham said, "I need a favor." "Anything, David. What's going on?" "There's someone I'd like you to find. An older woman. She was selling snacks outside the stadium yesterday. Name's Mariella. I'd like to know more about her." Javier paused. "You're thinking of bringing her in?" "Maybe. I just want to understand who she is first." Quietly. "No attention." "Got it. I'll send a couple of people from the outreach team." Discreet. Over the next few days, the club's community liaison quietly visited the neighborhood near the stadium. They asked around, posing as volunteers interested in setting up a local support program. It wasn't hard to find Mariella. People spoke fondly of her. A quiet fixture in the community, she was known not just for her snacks, but for the calm wisdom she offered freely. She'd watched over kids after school, helped elderly neighbors run errands, and once even stepped in when a local vendor was robbed. "She never asks for anything," one shopkeeper said, "but she gives a lot." Javier compiled a brief report. Her full name was Mariella Santos. Widowed. Her son, Mateo, had passed away 5 years prior in a car accident on his way to a youth football tournament. Since then, she had made ends meet by selling snacks outside events, mostly matches. No debts. No criminal record. Just an aging woman trying to remain useful. David read the file slowly, eyes pausing at the photograph someone had taken of her, hands mid-gesture, explaining something to a young mother. His instincts had been right. He asked Javier to set up a meeting. But instead of calling Mariella, David had a different idea. He wanted to see her again, not as David Beckham, the global icon, but as a man who had felt something stir inside him. Something that reminded him of his own mother, of the people who'd kept him grounded through fame, fortune, and scrutiny. So he dressed simply. Jeans. A plain shirt. Cap pulled low. And he returned to the stadium area late one afternoon. There she was. Same table. Same gentle posture. A small radio played a soft tune. Her hands were busy wrapping pastelitos and napkins. He stood nearby for a while watching. This time she noticed him first. "You again?" she said, smiling. "Did you like the tamarind candy?" "Loved it," he said. "Came back for more." She laughed. "You have good taste." He bought a few things. They chatted. She still didn't recognize him, and he didn't correct her. "I've seen you twice now," she said, narrowing her eyes. "You're not from around here." "No, but I like it here." She nodded. "It's not perfect, but it's home." He hesitated, then asked, "If someone offered you a job, something stable with purpose, would you take it?" She looked puzzled. "At my age? Who'd want to hire me?" "Someone who sees what you do. Who thinks it matters." Mariella blinked slowly. "What kind of job?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But maybe something in a place where young people could use your eyes. Your experience." She didn't answer right away. She folded a napkin, placed it gently in a box, then said, "I'm not used to people offering things without a catch." "There's no catch," he said. "Just a quiet test." A test. To see if kindness, dignity, and patience still count for something. Mariella looked at him carefully. "And do they?" "They should," he said softly. She smiled again. "Come back tomorrow. I'll think about it." He left quietly. But this time she watched him go, a curious glimmer in her eyes. Back home that night, David sat with his wife, Victoria. He told her everything. "You always say football is more than a game," she said, holding his hand. "Maybe this is what you meant." He nodded. "It's time the club reflects the values we say we believe in." And deep down he knew, this test wasn't just for Mariella. It was for him too. It was a warm Sunday morning when Beckham returned to the stadium grounds. This time he wasn't wearing his usual discreet attire. He came as himself, David Beckham, former football star and co-owner of Inter Miami. The moment had come to speak honestly, to let Mariella know who he really was and what he intended to offer. But even as he entered the same side alley where she usually set up her modest stall, she was not there. He waited. 10 minutes. 20. Still no sign. Concerned, Beckham took out his phone and called Javier. "Can you check if she's okay?" "Mariella. She's usually here by now." An hour later, Javier called back. "She's home. Feeling a bit under the weather. Nothing serious, just exhaustion. I think everything's starting to catch up to her." Without hesitation, Beckham asked for the address. He stopped at a local bakery on the way, picking up warm bread, some fresh juice, and a bouquet of yellow daisies. When he arrived, the building was old but tidy. A neighbor guided him up the narrow stairs. As he knocked, it was Mariella herself who opened the door, wrapped in a shawl. Her eyes widened. "You?" He smiled. "Me?" She stepped aside, silently inviting him in. Her apartment was small but spotless. Simple furniture, photographs of a younger man, her son, no doubt, adorned the walls. A candle burned in the corner. It smelled of cinnamon and something faintly floral. "I didn't expect you to come here," she said, slowly lowering herself into a worn armchair. "I didn't expect you not to be there," he replied softly, placing the items on her small kitchen table. "I was tired. I guess I'm not as strong as I used to be." He sat down across from her. "You're stronger than most people I know." There was a pause. "I wasn't honest with you," Beckham said. "My name is David Beckham. I help run Inter Miami. I saw you last week. I saw what you did for that little boy, and it stayed with me. I asked about you quietly. I learned your story." She didn't speak, just watched him, expression unreadable. "I want to offer you something. A job. At the club. A real position. Not charity. Not a handout. A place where your strength, your kindness, your presence would matter." "What kind of job?" "Community liaison. Helping bridge the club and the people. Being the voice of those who don't get hurt. You know these streets. These families. You have something we can't teach. Trust, respect, and lived experience." Mariella looked down at her hands. "I'm too old for this." "You're exactly the right age. The right person." Silence hung in the air again. She looked around her apartment, at the photos, the walls, the humble life she had built. "When my son died," she said quietly, "I stopped thinking about the future. I lived day to day, selling sweets, helping where I could. I didn't think anyone noticed. I noticed." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I don't want to be a mascot." "You won't be. You'll be a part of something bigger." She stood up slowly, walked over to the window and looked out. The city was alive below. Cars, children playing, people hurrying to their lives. "I used to take Mateo to the old stadium. He loved football. Said he wanted to be a midfielder like Kaka." She chuckled softly. "He would have liked you." Beckham smiled, his throat tightening. She turned back to him. "I'll do it. But only if I can still sell sweets outside the stadium sometimes. Not for money. For me. It's part of who I am." He stood, walked over, and extended his hand. "Deal." They shook hands, one seasoned by time, the other by fame, now joined by mutual respect. A week later, Mariella stood at the edge of the pitch, wearing an Inter Miami blazer over her floral dress. The announcer introduced her to the crowd as the club's new community liaison. The stadium, full of roaring fans, applauded a woman few knew, but all came to admire. David watched from the sidelines, his family beside him. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Some stories don't need headlines. They just need to be lived.